What if the very devil you conceive, the Prince of Darkness, was not the first architect of malevolence, nor the original serpent of corruption? What if, before the fall of any cherubim, before the concept of hell was even forged, there stirred an ancient darkness, primordial entities whose power rivaled nascent gods, whose very existence predated structured heavens and earths? You carry within your consciousness a deeply ingrained image of ultimate evil, but it is a relatively young one, a reflection of theological narratives that, though powerful, merely built upon older, more terrifying foundations. You are not prepared for what came before Lucifer, for the truly abyssal beings who carved the first scars onto the universe. These are the elder demons, the forgotten architects of chaos. To understand the darkness that birthed the devil, you must first meet the ones he feared, the ones who ruled the primordial void. To truly comprehend the genesis of cosmic evil, one must cast their mind back to the earliest recorded civilizations, the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, the sun-baked plains of Sumer, and the verdant crescent of Canaan. Here, in the dawn of human history, the oldest demons were not necessarily figures of pure evil in the Abrahamic sense. They were often manifestations of chaotic forces, untamable aspects of the cosmos, or even primordial deities whose domains were inherently terrifying to mortal sensibilities. They emerged from the churning, formless void, children of elemental destruction or the raw, untamed forces of creation itself. Their power was not derived from rebellion against a supreme god, but from their intrinsic connection to the raw, unfiltered energies of the burgeoning universe. You begin to understand that these entities were less about moral transgression and more about existential terror, the fear of the unknown, the untamable, the very fabric of existence before it was ordered. These beings fundamentally predate Abrahamic religions and the Luciferian narrative. While later, Abrahamic texts would reinterpret some of these ancient figures as lesser demons or fallen angels, their original myths reveal them as forces unto themselves, often worshipped or placated as primordial gods or elemental spirits. They were entities of chaos long before chaos was defined as a rebellion against divine order. One might imagine them as fragments of the very first scream of creation, given grotesque form. The themes surrounding these elder entities are those of primordial chaos, of the world before the demiurge imposed structure. They embody the formless void, the deep waters, the storm-torn skies. They are forgotten gods, sometimes powerful deities whose cults faded or were overthrown, their names eventually twisted into malevolent spirits by succeeding pantheons. And chillingly, some were even monstrous creators, beings from whose dismembered bodies or violent acts the very world was formed. Consider the Babylonian epic of creation, the Enuma Elish, where the primordial goddess Tiamat, a monstrous chaos dragon, is slain and her body is used to form the heavens and the earth. Her essence, however, lingered, a perpetual threat of dissolution. You are stepping into an epoch where the line between god and demon was blurred, where power was raw and unfiltered, and where entities existed that were simply older than the very concept of good and evil, as defined by later theology. Their presence was a testament to the terrifying, untamed forces of a universe still finding its form, a darkness that existed not as opposition, but as a foundational, primal reality. Their very existence challenges your comfortable notions of absolute evil, suggesting a darkness that is less about rebellion and more about the fundamental, terrifying nature of existence itself. Now, descend deeper into this ancient abyss and meet some of those who stirred within its primordial depths. You conjure the image of Lamashtu, a name whispered in primal fear across ancient Mesopotamia for over 4 millennia. She was not a fallen angel, but a hideous, composite demoness, a monstrous daughter of An, the sky god, embodying the raw terror of disease and infant mortality. Envision her form, as depicted on ancient amulets and cuneiform tablets, a lion-headed woman with the teeth of a donkey, often naked and hairy, her long fingers tipped with predatory talons. She is seen standing or kneeling on a pig, suckling both a dog and a piglet, her visage a grotesque tapestry of primal dread. Lamashtu was not a tempter or a subtle corrupter. She was a devourer, a brute force of annihilation. Her domain encompassed the blight of crops, the disruption of peaceful dreams, the agonizing gnawing of bones by unseen illness, and, most terrifyingly, the abduction and murder of infants, the torment of pregnant women, and the insidious act of drinking blood, you feel the cold, ancestral dread that would grip a mother's heart at the mere mention of her name, the terror of helpless loss. Rituals against her involved desperate incantations, the crafting of protective amulets, and the terrifying knowledge that she could not be reasoned with, only driven away by specific, harrowing rites. Unlike Lucifer, who offers power through temptation, Lamashtu offers only agonizing suffering and swift, brutal death, a primal, unthinking force of destruction that predates any moral framework. She is the embodiment of ancient, visceral horror. Yet, even in this realm of ancient terrors, there existed paradoxical forces. If Lamashtu was the terror of pestilence, then Pazuzu was her monstrous, yet strangely invoked, counterpoint. Also from the heart of Mesopotamia, Pazuzu emerged as the king of the Lilu, demons, ruling the dry, scorching winds that swept across the desert, bringing famine, plague, and devastation. You might feel the sand sting your eyes as you visualize his grotesque form on ancient effigies, a powerful human body topped with a lion's head, possessing fearsome canine teeth, eagle-like talons, and 4 robust, bird-like wings that stirred up dust storms. Yet, despite his terrifying appearance and destructive domain, Pazuzu was frequently invoked by humans. Why? Because he was believed to specifically protect against his rival, Lamashtu, often depicted in direct opposition to her. You would wear his monstrous image, clinging to it desperately, hoping to ward off her assaults, relying on one horror to combat another. His origins are not of divine rebellion or a fall from grace, but of the primordial, untamed forces of nature, the destructive, yet sometimes beneficial power of the winds. He is a demon of the wild, untamed desert, older than any established moral hierarchy, a force of nature whose power could be turned against others, a grim, amoral protector. His grotesque visage is less about sin and more about raw, terrifying power, a direct confrontation with the elements themselves. As you delve deeper into the shadows of primordial lore, you encounter the seductive, terrifying enigma of Lilith, a figure whose whispers stretch from Sumerian lore as the Lilithu spirits to Jewish folklore long before the tales of Eve were firmly established. She is often depicted as the first woman created, before Eve, who refused to be subservient to Adam, demanding equality. For her defiance, she fled Eden and embraced the shadows, transforming into a terrifying demoness of the night. You might envision her, a being of ethereal beauty, seductive and alluring, yet often with long, unbound flowing hair, sometimes bearing wings, or possessing unsettling owl-like feet, and the chilling ability to transform her shape at will. Her domain is the night, the untamed wilderness, and the very essence of chaos that lurks just beyond the boundaries of order. She is famously considered the mother of succubi and incubi, preying on men in their sleep, stealing their seed. Most terrifyingly, she is known as a child killer, particularly targeting newborns and pregnant women, a direct, chilling echo of Lamashtu's ancient domain. Unlike Lucifer, whose fall is rooted in pride against God, Lilith's fall is rooted in her demand for autonomy and equality, a profoundly different kind of rebellion that predates the very concept of Genesis's Eden. She represents the untamed, dangerous feminine, a primordial force that cannot be controlled or subdued, existing as a terrifying, seductive shadow beyond conventional morality. Now, shift your gaze to a more colossal, elemental terror. You confront the sheer, overwhelming majesty and primordial power of Tiamat, the vast, churning goddess of the salt sea and primordial chaos in Babylonian mythology. She is a being whose very existence is the original darkness, not a creature of later evil, but a fundamental force of creation itself. She is the mother of the first gods, yet destined to be slain and transformed. You see her, a colossal, terrifying serpentine dragon, the embodiment of undifferentiated, turbulent chaos, with immense scales, powerful wings that stir cosmic storms, and a gaping maw that threatens to devour all. From her dismembered body, after her violent defeat by the storm god Marduk, the heavens and the earth were formed, her essence literally becoming the cosmos. Her realm is the undifferentiated, tumultuous waters of primeval creation, the abyssal deep from which all emerged. The The myth of Tiamat represents the ordering of the cosmos from elemental chaos, but her terrifying, destructive essence, the potential for dissolution and return to the void, lingers beneath the surface of all reality. She predates any angel, any devil, existing before structure itself. Lucifer's rebellion is within an established cosmos. Tiamat is the cosmos before it was defined. She is the terrifying, fertile void, the mother of all monsters, whose presence still makes the deep waters churn in your imagination. From the depths of Canaanite mythology, you feel the crushing pressure of the deep as you encounter Leviathan, a colossal, serpentine sea monster whose origins, as Lotan, stretch back long before any Hebrew scripture was penned. Leviathan is not a creature of sin, but a primordial beast of chaos, an untamable force embodying the raw, destructive power of the ocean. You visualize it, a multi-headed, coiling dragon of the deep, its scales like impenetrable shields, its breath fire, its movements stirring the very foundations of the sea and causing the waters to boil. Its domain is the vast, uncontrollable depths, representing the raw, destructive forces of nature that even God himself must confront and subdue to establish order. Leviathan existed before the dry land, before humanity, a force of primordial chaos that ceaselessly resisted the act of creation itself. Its myths are less about good and evil and more about the struggle between order and chaos, embodying a fundamental cosmic adversary. Lucifer is a rebel within God's creation. Leviathan is a primal challenge to creation itself. You hear the thunder crack and feel the fertile earth tremble as you gaze upon Baal, a dominant storm and fertility god from ancient Canaanite religion. His image, revered in his time, was later systematically reinterpreted and aggressively vilified as a demon within Abrahamic tradition, most notably becoming Baal-zebul, Beelzebub, a name you know well. Originally, Baal was a powerful, benevolent deity, worshipped for bringing life-giving rain, ensuring bountiful harvests, and granting victory in battle. You might see him depicted as a powerful, virile deity, often with a bull's horn signifying strength and fertility, or holding a lightning bolt, symbolizing his command over storms. His domain encompassed the heavens, the very storms that nourish the land, the life-giving rains, and the fundamental fertility of the land and its people. His transformation into a demon is a prime example of religious demonization, a deliberate act where a once revered deity of a rival pantheon is systematically twisted into a figure of pure malevolence, stripped of his positive attributes and associated only with idolatry and corruption. Unlike Lucifer, whose story is one of internal pride and fall from within a singular divine system, Baal's demonization is an external transformation, a theological weapon wielded against a competing worship, marking him as an elder adversary from a prior spiritual age whose power had to be inverted to fit a new narrative. Your senses are assaulted by a chilling heat, a sickening aroma of burning flesh, as you approach the horrific presence of Moloch, a terrifying deity whose name is synonymous with the darkest act imaginable in ancient Canaanite and Phoenician cults, child sacrifice. You envision his grotesque idol, a colossal bronze figure, often with a bull's head and a human body, its immense, outstretched arms sloping downwards to a heated furnace built directly into its belly. In times of desperate famine, plague, or fervent plea, children, sacrificed to appease this brutal god, were placed into these heated arms and consumed by the roaring flames, their agonizing screams chillingly masked by the incessant beating of ritual drums and the mournful wailing of flutes. Moloch's domain was extreme sacrifice, often for fertility, prosperity, or averting disaster, representing a chilling, primordial negotiation with divine or cosmic powers that demanded the ultimate price. He is an ancient terror, a deity of immense, horrifying demand. While Lucifer tempts the adult soul, offering an intellectual path to damnation, Moloch directly demands the innocent blood of children, a raw, brutal, and utterly primal form of malevolence that existed in human practice for centuries before the formalized concept of Satan or the more nuanced temptations of other demons. His evil is not philosophical, but viscerally enacted through the ultimate, unforgivable violation of innocence. The very air seems to thicken with ancient dread. The watery depths churn with untamed power as you consider Rahab, a primordial chaos monster from ancient Hebrew mythology, often depicted as a fearsome sea dragon or a formidable beast of the deep. While sometimes identified with Leviathan or Tiamat, Rahab holds its own distinct, terrifying identity as a force of cosmic opposition. You see it, a monstrous, rebellious entity of chaos that existed before creation was ordered, a primeval adversary to divine will. Rahab is mentioned in prophetic texts not just as a symbol of cosmic evil, but also as a symbolic representation of Egypt, a powerful, chaotic force resisting divine will and the liberation of peoples. Its myths speak of raw, brute resistance to the establishing order of the universe, a primeval force that had to be confronted and defeated for the world to take its current, ordered form. Rahab's defiance predates any celestial court, any established heavenly order, existing as pure, undifferentiated opposition to the very act of creation itself. Lucifer rebels within God's established kingdom. Rahab is a force against the very act of establishing that kingdom, a primal, untamed terror of the deep. You feel the chill of the grave, the inevitable cold of eternal cessation, as you summon the essence of Mot, the formidable Canaanite god of death, and the underworld, the eternal, unyielding enemy of Baal. Mot is not a demon in the sense of a fallen angel or a corrupted spirit. He is the personification of death itself, of absolute barrenness, of all-consuming decay, and the ultimate, inescapable end of all life. You envision him, a gaunt, skeletal figure, his very being a shadow of consumption, his mouth a gaping maw of insatiable hunger, perpetually consuming all living things, from man to beast, from vegetation to water. His domain is the underworld, the realm of the dead, the silent land where all souls eventually descend and are consumed. Mot's existence is a fundamental, cyclical aspect of creation, representing the inevitable end and the consumption of vitality, a cosmic balance to life. He embodies the terrifying reality of mortality, a primordial force that existed long before the concept of punishment for sin. He is the ultimate devourer, predating the very idea of a moral hell constructed for the wicked. His terror is not from temptation, but from inevitability, a raw, unyielding power that all mortals must eventually face, a cosmic force that asserts its dominion over every living thing, rather than a moral adversary to be overcome. Finally, you feel the burning heat of fever, the cold dread of battle, and the despair of annihilation as you stand before Nergal, a powerful Mesopotamian deity often associated with the underworld, plague, pestilence, and destructive warfare. He is a god of the scorching sun and the terrifying darkness of the netherworld, a formidable and fearsome figure. You see him, often depicted as a lion-headed human, or a fierce warrior wielding a scimitar, embodying both the destructive heat of summer and the inescapable grasp of death. His domain encompasses the scorching earth, the underworld, and the various calamities that frequently befall humanity, devastating plagues, brutal wars, and the annihilation of entire armies. Nergal is an ancient god whose terrifying aspects made him a primordial demon in later interpretations by subsequent cultures. His power is not born of rebellion, but from his inherent nature as a force of cosmic destruction and the inescapable lord of the grave. Unlike Lucifer, whose methods involve deception and intellectual temptation, Nergal brings direct, unadulterated suffering through plague and violent, merciless death. He is a lord of inevitable destruction, a true elder force that ruled over realms of suffering long before any concept of hell as a moral punishment for sin existed. His is a power of raw, unyielding annihilation, a terror woven into the very fabric of existence. As you have now journeyed through the abyssal depths of primordial demonology, confronting these ancient architects of shadow, a crucial question emerges. What, then, is the precise connection between these primal, elemental terrors and the figure of Lucifer, the shining morning star, the more familiar Prince of Darkness? Lucifer, as he is largely understood in Abrahamic and Christian theology, often appears not as a progenitor of evil, but as a successor, perhaps even a formidable rival, to these older entities, or a complex figure who absorbed and redefined their terrifying roles within a new, dominant cosmic narrative. Lucifer's rebellion, as depicted in later Abrahamic traditions, is one of internal pride and defiance against a supreme god within an established celestial hierarchy. He sought to usurp a throne, to become like the Most High, to command worship himself. The elder demons, however, emerge from a more chaotic, undifferentiated past. Their power is inherent, often tied to elemental forces, cosmic processes, or the primordial void itself. Lucifer, in this context, might be seen as a figure who learned from these ancient beings, or perhaps, in his grand ambition, sought to control, co-opt, or even mimic their raw, untamed power for his own ends. His ascent to a position of ultimate evil is a sophisticated maneuver within a pre-existing landscape of terror. You can trace themes of mimicry in Lucifer's ascent to his infernal throne. He takes on aspects of primordial chaos, bringing disorder, but within a structured framework of temptation and sin. His desire to usurp the divine throne can be seen as an attempt to become a supreme ruler of evil, much like Tiamat was a supreme force of chaos in her undifferentiated realm, or Mot, a supreme lord of death, or Nergal, a supreme bringer of calamity. Lucifer's rebellion, while grand in scale and theological impact, is a calculated act within an already defined divine system, a strategic move. The elder demons, in contrast, often predate or exist outside such defined systems, embodying a more fundamental, less morally charged form of opposition. Lucifer inherited a cosmos already scarred by ancient terrors, by primordial violence, and the untamed forces of nature. He did not invent chaos. He merely perfected its manipulation within the new, divinely established order. The concept of hell itself, as you understand it, a realm of eternal suffering, a structured prison for the damned, a place of ultimate torment, owes its foundational architecture to the very existence and brutal punishment of these elder beings. The abyss into which the Watchers were cast, the desolate underworlds ruled by Mot or Nergal, the fiery pits associated with Moloch's horrifying rituals, these pre-existing realms of suffering were the ancient ruins upon which the later throne of hell was built. Lucifer, in his new, post-rebellion role as Prince of Darkness, did not create this abyss. He merely took dominion over realms already established by older, more fundamental forces of decay, death, and primordial chaos. You might imagine his dark throne standing atop the crumbling remnants of Tiamat's cosmic body, or overseeing the chained forms of the Watchers in Tartarus. Thus, Lucifer's role becomes that of a manager of an existing darkness, a reorganizer of ancient evils into a hierarchical system of temptation and damnation. He represents a more refined, theological form of malevolencione, of intellectual pride, subtle deception, and ideological opposition to God. The elder demons, in stark contrast, embody a more visceral, unthinking, primordial horror, the raw power of pestilence, famine, war, and the unavoidable reality of death itself. Lucifer is the orchestrator of sin within consciousness. These elder demons are the fundamental, terrifying forces of nature and existence that predate consciousness. Their existence profoundly shaped the cosmic landscape of evil, creating the very stage upon which Lucifer would later perform his grand, infamous rebellion, a legacy built upon foundations of ancient, untamed terror. You might wonder why these ancient, seemingly forgotten entities, these beings of primordial chaos and primeval terror, still hold any relevance in your modern world. Why should you care about names whispered in long-dead languages, about myths from civilizations buried under millennia of sand? The unsettling truth is that their influence, their very essence, was never truly destroyed. It was merely renamed, reinterpreted, or buried beneath layers of new theology and cultural amnesia, and they continue to shape your reality, your fears, and your spiritual landscape in ways you might not even perceive. Their legacy manifests in subtle yet profound ways within various belief systems and human experiences. You can trace their archetypal resonance in modern rituals, within esoteric traditions, where practitioners still invoke ancient names or symbols tied to these primordial forces, often seeking raw, untamed power beyond the conventional angelic or demonic hierarchies. Their figures, their domains, and their specific methods of influence are often referenced in occult symbolism, their sigils and sigla hidden in plain sight within magical systems, continuing to draw energies from the earliest wells of chaos and cosmic power. You might encounter echoes of them in various forms of angelic invocations, their original divine forms twisted by later interpretations, but still bearing the marks of their primordial power and ancient origins. Psychologically, these elder demons embody fundamental, archetypal fears and universal human experiences that transcend specific religious doctrines. Psychology itself, especially Jungian analysis, recognizes the enduring power of such primordial archetypes within the collective unconscious of humanity. Lamashtu's infant-killing terror taps into the universal, ancestral fear of losing a child, a primal vulnerability. Moloch's demands resonate with the horror of ultimate, self-destructive sacrifice. Tiamat embodies the unbridled chaos that always lurks beneath apparent order, threatening dissolution. These ancient fears, once personified in terrifying deities and demons, continue to haunt the human psyche, influencing dreams, anxieties, and the shadow aspects of your own being, a primal echo of their ancient dominion. In esoteric traditions, particularly within certain currents of Kabbalah, Hermeticism, and various forms of Gnosticism, these entities are rarely dismissed as mere folklore or simple superstition. Instead, they are studied as fundamental forces or aspects of reality, often seen as powerful, albeit dangerous, gatekeepers to profound knowledge. Some texts reinterpret them not as inherently evil, but as forces that facilitate spiritual tests or represent necessary cosmic imbalances for growth and transformation. You discover their names revered or feared, not just as mythological figures, but as active astral presences that can be channeled, avoided, or, most perilously, commanded through ritual and will. The chilling question remains, echoing through the ages and penetrating your very consciousness. Did the Watchers truly fall? Bound forever in the abyss, is their imprisonment merely a facade? Their influence subtle, pervasive, and unseen? Are they still watching, still guiding, still manipulating the affairs of mankind from their abyssal chains, their dark legacy playing out in cycles throughout human history? Their story reminds one that the boundaries between light and shadow, heaven and hell, knowledge and corruption, are far more permeable and intertwined than one might ever dare to believe. One feels an unsettling presence, a sense of being constantly observed, as one grapples with the enduring legacy of these original architects of spiritual rebellion and the ancient architects of forbidden knowledge. One has now journeyed through the forgotten epochs of time, beyond the familiar narratives of Lucifer, into the terrifying truth of the elder demons. These were entities not forged in defiance of a single deity, but born from the primordial chaos itself, wielding powers that shaped nascent worlds and terrified the earliest human consciousness. Lucifer, the bright morning star, may stand as the most famous symbol of rebellion, but you now understand he was not the first. Before him, before the very concept of hell as a moral punishment for sin, these older, more fundamental terrors held dominion. They were the primordial architects of shadow, the first scars on the face of creation. The mythic power of these older beings remains undiminished by time. Their stories are etched into the deepest layers of human collective memory, reflecting primal fears of nature's raw force, of pestilence, of unthinking destruction, and of death itself. They represent a darkness that is elemental, pervasive, and often immoral, challenging your comfortable notions of good and evil by embodying forces that simply are fundamental aspects of existence. They are the ancient ancestors of evil, the original shadow cast across creation, an eternal counterpoint to order. Their legacy persists, not as mere folklore, but as a haunting resonance within the esoteric traditions, within the archetypal fears you carry, and perhaps within the very fabric of the cosmos. Their existence reminds you that some forms of darkness are not born from rebellion against a divine king, but from the raw, untamed essence of reality itself, forces that have been, and perhaps always will be. You are left with a chilling question, a final whisper from the abyss of primordial time. If the cosmos itself birthed such ancient, terrifying entities, and if even angels, beings of light and perfection, could succumb to darkness and become demons, what makes you think you are truly safe from their influence, or from the dark currents that flow through your own being, waiting to be unleashed?